Welcome back. Conrad, everybody wants to talk about it. We talked about it last episode and it's back, and it deserves a little more of our attention. ChatGPT. Tell me
Yeah.
what you know.
So when we initially reported on this, it was really fascinating. It was quite amazing how well written bad information could be presented, right? And our first take on ChatGPT was it writes things in a very understandable way that are completely false. That can be completely false, and it's made more difficult because we're dealing with legal, and legal is difficult because it changes by jurisdiction. There's specificities that people need to understand, and so there was an accuracy issue. Although the writing itself at a eighth grade level was quite surprisingly good. Since that has come out, I remember when I was watching college football when it hit like my awareness, and I spent most of the game actually messing around with ChatGPT and being amazed. I have continued to play around with this. One of the reports was, you know what, Google does not like ChatGPT, does not like artificially generated AI generated content, and they specifically called it out as being spam. And Guy and I had this conversation about like, well, maybe the content that it's delivering is better than the garbage that a lot of you guys have on your websites. Doesn't that fall into Google's stated desire? And so why do they have an issue? I have since spent a lot of time working on ChatGPT, messing with ChatGPT, understanding how it is working. And I will tell you this: either Google doesn't know how to identify AI generated content, or they don't care. I think it is the former, but AI generated content is doing an amazing job at generating inbound traffic if you know how to use it. And this is super, super important. None of this matters if your technology sucks and you don't have any links, right? But if you are looking to generate a bunch of content from an SEO perspective that is going to drive traffic, there is a method to do that. And I'll give you the short version of that method. Think about a long-term keyword if you have to research that. Although you've talked about using ChatGPT as an ideation tool. Talk about that for a second, and then I'll get into the method for making content that actually works.
Yeah, so I think I don't know, it was Bankrate and CNET, and I know CNET had some You can read these stories there because everybody's super hot on the internet. This ChatGPT thing, you can see tons of stories about it. In fact, somebody else actually wrote a post about they got their article on AI detection of artificial content to rank #1 for the query using ChatGPT, which I thought was hilarious. Couple of my takes on it, and Conrad, you already alluded to this, but one, I would disclose that and disclaim that your content is being written, if you're going to use it, by artificial intelligence, or at least assisted by artificial intelligence. Two, I would have a human editor review it, especially for legal. If you're going to write legal stuff, you better have a lawyer who's going to be responsible for what you're writing. Take a look at that and put their name on it. But from an ideation standpoint, right? Like this is, lawyers, you might struggle even outside of the context of writing legal stuff, which is we'll talk about this next episode, but a lot of your best marketing has nothing to do with the law that you practice, but that's for another day. But if you need ideas, ChatGPT, you can throw into ChatGPT, give me 10 different article headlines for, whatever topic you want to write about. ChatGPT does a pretty good job for that. And again, it's pretty benign in that context, right? You're going to use the headline, you're probably going to manipulate it, but it's pretty good because it's actually, it's natural language. And, some of the examples that I've looked at, I was like, that actually is helpful. And that's a task that can be automated.
Yep.
I think you're going to see a lot of it in the chat box context. I know Tom Martin at LawDroid is doing check out, just search for Tom LawDroid and his applications for ChatGPT in the online chat context. I think you're going to see that as a good spot for it. But again, look, if you're using it for publishing and you're editing it and you're disclosing that you're using it, Google changed course, as Conrad mentioned. Google changed course faster on this, or they say they just clarified. They don't say that they changed course. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the Google version of ChatGPT coming out in the near future, because again, if you think about it, this is where Google wants to go. They want to be the Star Trek computer, which this feels an awful lot like.
Yeah. It is. I mean, Microsoft's working on this. Everyone is talking about this. I will tell you that. So, as I was talking about this, I was like, "Wow, I better be careful." I am not doing this for my clients. Okay, we are not doing this for our clients. Having said
But if your
that,
clients want to do it and they want some help, you'll help them with it.
I will lay out the foundation of how this works, of how it is effective at generating traffic through AI generated content. Whether or not that is a good idea, I think is yet to be seen. So in an abundance of, caveat emptor, right? There's my Latin for the day. In an abundance of caution, we're not doing this with clients. Having said that, as I've messed around with this is the method that you can use. Use ChatGPT to generate, a 1,000 word piece of content about something that people would hire your law firm for. You then need to put human eyes on that and edit it. Okay. You need to go back and edit it. And then I would use a second, not ChatGPT, but a second AI generated content tool, right? Like a grammar checking tool, like a Quillbot, for example. Run it through that, edit it again, run it through that again, and then make sure that what you have is factually accurate. That is working. I'm looking right now at Google Analytics. I can't share this here because it's a podcast, but that is working at driving traffic. Now, and I said this before, your technology has to be awesome. Your link profile needs to be strong enough to support what you're doing, and support the volume of content that you have. I think that is massively overlooked by most of the SEO industry, but this works. It works. I'm looking at the data that shows you that it works, and it'll be interesting to see how this evolves. We're watching this very, very carefully.
Yep. So good thing to learn. Good thing to know some of the risks at play.
Sorry, we haven't really talked about the risks in this show, Guy.
Yeah.
What are the risks?
Well, the risk number one is that if you think that Google is going to try to fight this stuff, then there's always a risk that it triggers some kind of spam fighting algorithm. We haven't seen that to be the case yet, but that's a risk. Two is that you publish things that are factually, legally incorrect, and you have some liability and exposure if you're doing that. Three is that there's a built-in potential ethics rule violation. If you imply that you wrote something and it was written by AI, that's at least misleading at best. I believe, I could be wrong about this because I haven't checked in a while. I think it applies here, but I believe California has a state law that says you have to disclose if your content is AI generated.
Is that the same as having FindLaw write blog articles for you?
Well, if they're written by humans, so
maybe
if your human writes a blog article on your firm's behalf and you're not putting your name next to it, there's that argument. But again, it goes. We've talked about this with the ghostwriting thing for years. Is it misleading if a copywriter writes something, you review it and approve it and then publish it under your name? Is that misleading under the ethics rules? A lot of lawyers would say yes.
So let me ask a clarifying question on your point number 3, which is disclosure. Is your point number 3 around lawyers and ethics and bars, or is it around SEO and Google and penalties?
Both. So okay. One of the guidelines, some of the guidance that Google gave was that you should disclose that. And so the major publisher sites who are doing this at scale, like CNET and Bankrate, they both disclosed, and I think for that very reason. I don't know if they did it from a consumer protection issue standpoint, but I think Google did. I'd have to dig that up, but I believe Google gave guidance that, and again, this is classic Google. Their guidance is, well, as long as it's helpful content, we don't care if it's written by a machine or written by a human. It's like, okay, great. So just write great content.
Which is the clarifying of their position on this that has happened over the last 4 weeks. That is a change. You said clarifying in quotes. That is not a clarifying. That is a reversal.
I read it as a reversal too.
It's a 100% a reversal, right?
Qualifying.
They made a very clear statement that AI generated content they considered spam, right? That was very, very clear. And then they have clarified this with a complete reversal that if it's helpful to humans, it's actually okay.
Right. So look, it's powerful. And this is only ChatGPT 3. Wait until you see what 4 is going to do.
Yeah.
Because as AI goes, the corpus of input that it's getting is going to start growing exponentially, and that's where AI takes off, right? Because that's the real advantage. And so I think it's not going to get worse. It's going to start getting a lot better, and it's going to get a lot harder to detect.
Do you think it's going to get better on the factual issue? Right, like I think about legal accuracy. You think it's going to get better on factual because
I'll dig this up too. But they just did a study. I'm going to probably get this wrong. So if you followed this, you can hashtag LHLM me and show me where I'm wrong. But short version is they had a AI do like a diagnosis against this large data set of like patient data. And then they had human doctors review the AI diagnosis, and I believe that the AI got the correct diagnosis more often than the doctors did. So this AI thing, I don't know. People are skeptical of it. The nuance of the fact stuff is actually not that as hard as people think it is. Especially for some basic questions. There are all sorts of other things that go into practicing law and being a doctor that have nothing to do with just like the prima facie case, as the lawyers would say, which I agree with. There's a human element to practicing law that the AI is not there yet. But on getting the facts and applying the law, I think you're going to see this AI thing do a lot better than a lot of lawyers. I mean, So humans don't like this. Seems like I can get replaced pretty easily.
Especially if you like kind of make your living on these types of things.
Writing a will?
An amazing example in the medical space. AI has been able to detect the difference in gender by looking at your eyes. Okay. Now, 2 things out of that. No human can actually do that. If you look at a set of eyes, you're incapable of ascertaining gender based on what eyes look like. And the researchers who have done this can't figure out how the AI has used eyes to figure out gender, right? Like it is very amazing. All right.
I've not seen that one.
It's just super fascinating. I'll see if I can dig it up and throw it in the show notes. All right. Now that we have determined that Terminator is coming to take over the legal industry, we will see you in 2 weeks with more updates on AI. We've also got a great question about content in general and keyword stuffing that we will address. It came in for this week, but we had a full show, so we will address that next week. Money makes a world go round. Yeah, money make a world go round. Yeah, money make a world go round. Yeah, money make a world go